So, on the previous video I was doing, I mentioned that I wanted to talk about where I think Zelda is going next. To kind of, because I feel like that I have to reiterate and explain my viewpoint. To kind of explain very quickly, I gave Tears of the Kingdom my game of the year, but I did not end up liking it as much as I thought I would, which is a weird place for me to be. But also that year was just not very good for games overall. But the long and short of it is that I felt that its open world experience needed something. It was lacking that something in the game that I would have actually really enjoyed. And I think I came to the conclusion of what the game had actually been missing while I was talking to a friend about other things. And I kind of figured it out. Okay, so to explain, so Breath of the Wild, at least the way that it was explained when the game was still in development, or at least was still in the before release phase of the game, there was an interview that I saw talking about how they were coming up with some of the mechanics. And they basically just laid it out on the table where they talked about Zelda 1 and said that at the end of the day, Breath of the Wild is effectively a remake of Zelda 1, both in terms of how they wanted the game to feel, both on the player side and the mechanics side of the game, where the game wanted to be difficult and obtuse, while also feeling like there is a completely hidden story somewhere deep into here. I did not explain that too well, but the vibe of Zelda 1 that has this mysterious adventuring feel to it is what they really wanted to capture when they were making Breath of the Wild, and I feel like that they did that pretty well. And whether or not you like Tears of the Kingdom, I personally feel like that they did it again when it comes to replicating Zelda 2, where the game is a lot more combat focused. The game is a lot darker thematically, and the story beats carry the same sort of weight. And when I kind of realized what they were doing, I came up with an idea of possibly where they were going for the third open world Zelda game. And that is to remake the third Zelda game. And some people would say, well, there isn't a Zelda 3, and the answer to that is yes, it's called Link to the Past, which always felt kind of weird that a game called Link to the Past was not the story with time travel in it. But if you ask me, I think that that's where they're going to go with the next Zelda game. So, there is a piece of concept art where Link is in a more modern style outfit where it's a green, biker jacket. And he is riding on a motorcycle that he named Epona. If I remember correctly, that piece of concept art was directly referenced when it came to creating the Master Cycle in Breath of the Wild, where it's like we still wanted to do the motorcycle thing, so we just gave him a motorcycle, whatever. Everyone kind of thought that was kind of amusing. But I always really enjoyed the idea of a Zelda set in a modern day. And so I just want you to think about this conceptually. Okay, so imagine that Link lives with his uncle, and they're like a bike shop owner. And one day, his uncle is killed, and he is told, "Hey, you need to go find the princess and save her." And Link has no idea why. But on the journey over there, he finds uh he finds, whatever. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot his name. The guy in the red cloak who is a servant of Ganon, and his whole plan. He then gets shunted off into the Dark World. But in this universe, or at least in this story, the dark the Dark World is actually Hyrule in the past, after they have started to rebuild Hyrule. So you get two versions of the world at once. So you have this modern day Zelda world, and then you have what it looks like when Hyrule gets rebuilt after after the second open world Zelda game. So let's just say that you have. I'm going to talk about uh, Rito Village because I like that area so much. So imagine you have adult Tulin who is doing all of his stuff over there, interacting with a a uh, a more aged Zelda and Link, and you're kind of experiencing that like stuff in the past secondhand, just kind of looking at all this stuff. And then you would come back to the modern day where you see Rito Village that is more modernized. Just like how most of Hyrule has turned into something a lot more modern. Of course, Rito Village has been a lot more modern. And that goes for literally everywhere in the entire game. It's like most of Hyrule is now there's a lot less just pure open world to the game. Actually, no, it probably would be exactly the same open world. In fact, it is the same open world. But now, in the modern Zelda, in the modern Hyrule, you have all of these like constructed buildings everywhere. You have a lot more like modern designs. The roads are a little bit more safe. Like all this kind of stuff. And then when you go into the past, you have a lot less safe areas. You have a lot less like just straight from the outset, that like there's still enemies everywhere and you're still running around and there's a lot less development, but it's back on its feet after the all the stuff that has happened. And in a way, it's kind of an inverse of what happened to Zelda in Tears of the Kingdom, where instead of Zelda being sent into the far past, you have this modern Link coming in from the future. And now Zelda has to kind of deal with that. And of course, there are going to be scenes where, like, both Links are just interacting with each other. And maybe, like, an aged Link gives your new Link a like some like combat training or something as an homage to the hero's shade from Twilight Princess or something. Like, I honestly feel like that would be a really neat place to go. And I don't want to put it like this, but it might actually be like a really good stopping point for the series as a whole if they ever wanted to do that, where you have this whole like game that wraps up so much about Zelda, both in terms of gameplay, lore, and like all that kind of stuff. And they just go, hey, this isn't the final Zelda game, but we are gonna take a break from it for a while. And we're also gonna give it to like a new team to work on it. And you might not see Zelda for another like decade after this. Like, that might be fascinating. You know, I say that like there wasn't like a, a 5-6 year gap between Zelda games when it was open world, but like I do hear people say a lot that some of the best Zelda games are the ones that reuse assets, so they don't have to worry so much about diverting resources to making new stuff. And I say that has never been true. Or at least when it comes to Tears of the Kingdom, it wasn't true as well, because they still made like a lot of new stuff for that game. Speaking of, I should actually probably play Tears of the Kingdom again at some point, because I still owe people me finishing all those side quests, because I just gave up on the side quest after finding out that I couldn't 100% the game. But yeah, I definitely want to go back and finish that. Well, this has been me rambling about like some like Zelda stuff. I really do need to make these videos more often to just kind of like vent my ideas, because I feel like that I don't do that enough. Where I have all these ideas just like in my head that I just need to get out somehow, and I don't really have good outlets for that. Either way, I'll see all y'all another time. Goodbye.